Hello, everybody. My name is Joel Filderman, and welcome to the Dog Trainers Connection. I'm not a dog trainer, but these other people you see here are, and they have many years of experience in the dog training world. We get together, we discuss a topic, we come up with some thoughts, some ideas, and sometimes some answers. And so today's topic, today's topic is basically this. It's going to be board and train versus private training. And the reason that I wanted to talk about this today was I was doing a little reading, and I saw something about boarding and training, and about the fact that it used to be more popular to do that. And now with all private training and with people training dogs themselves, because of all the books that have come out within the last 30 or so years, the question really is this: is one better than the other? Back when, in the old days, when you wanted to train your dog, most people would call up a trainer and send the dog away, and the dog would come back and be trained, and etc. Nowadays, they call up a trainer, and the trainer comes into the home. I know that there are some of you here, if not all of you here, who still do board and train. But as somebody who's not a dog trainer, what's the difference, and is one better than the other? And I don't know. There's a lot of different things to this, I guess. So anybody want to start today? Nobody wants to start today.
All right, I'll start.
Okay.
Since I do both and for different reasons.
Okay.
So usually I'm against boarding and training, and that's one of the things I do. And
why?
When I say that, it's because a lot of the dogs that I'm working with require there's some behavior modification that's required. If it's basic obedience and someone's sending their dog to someone for a week or two for basic obedience, and basic training, house manners, stuff like that, I don't see anything wrong with it. I don't think there's a huge need for any transferring of leadership or anything like that from a board and trained person to the owner. I think if you have just a good old regular dog that just needs some basic training, I think it's fine. I think from a behavior standpoint, I always prefer to do it in the home, in the environment in which, where the behaviors are occurring. That's just my personal preference. And it's also based on experience. Even you eliminate owners from the dog, or you eliminate the dog from the environment, you eliminate the dog's environment from her or him. In other words, you take the dog away from the environment. A lot of times you don't see the same problems. And I've had it. I mean, I don't even know how many times, just in the past 5 years of down here. And I don't board and train for the public. I only do that for rescues and for homeless dogs. So it's a little different in that, like, if the dogs that come to me, if they were someone's pet, I would do everything in my power to try and get them to work with a trainer locally in their home. But in the case, and what I do here primarily with the rescue dogs is a little different because they're homeless. They have no owners. They have no guardians. Some of them are in, foster homes that are doing the best they can, or they're in boarding facilities, or worse, they're in shelters and they come here. So obviously it's going to be an upgrade, and we're going to be able to work through some issues. But, I had a dog that was with me for a while, and I mean, he was one of the best dogs I've had here, and he's dead now. And he's dead because stuff happened when he left here. And, sometimes there's no way to recreate environmental factors. And, when a dog behaves in one environment doesn't necessarily mean that dog is going to behave the same way in another environment. Now I'm talking about behavior. I'm not talking about basic obedience. Remember,
right.
Regular dogs, just, good old, dogs that are just good dogs, right? They'll just behave anywhere, anytime for anyone, right? But with behavior modification, I always prefer, and I recommend, if people are asking my advice, that, they should work the dog in the environment. The exception to that rule if there's safety issues. Right? If people or visitors or other pets in the household are at risk, then sometimes it's probably safer to remove the dog from the environment than work the dog in that capacity. Mm-hmm. And then here's the controversial thing, because, you know, I got to throw one of those out there, right?
No.
People, and I'm not talking about severe behavior modification or anything like that, right? For regular boarding and training.
Right.
I mean, first of all, people are lazy. So if you're sending your dog away for a couple of weeks to get trained, you know, sit down, come, stay, you know, leave it, walk on the leash. I mean, you're lazy. I'm sorry. You're lazy. It doesn't take long to do that. And then the trainers who do these group classes and they string these people along for 8 weeks to teach sit down, come, stay, and walk on the leash over an 8-week period. Now, granted, if they have group packages and they're charging a couple of $100 for the class, that's fine.
Right.
These trainers that are whacking people $100 to $200 a session to teach sit down, come, and stay over the course of 8 weeks. I'm sorry, I got a problem with that. You know, I don't care who I upset here, but if there's like dog owners watching this and a dog trainer is going to teach your dog sit down, come, stay, and walk on a leash over an 8-week period and charge you by the session, find another trainer. And that's not an attack on people who implement certain protocols.
Are you talking about group classes for 8 weeks? Because
no, if they're doing like a $200
you're talking about
group class,
private.
that's fine.
You're talking about private.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I thought you said group class.
Yeah.
No, if they're paying $200 for an 8-week course, great. But if they're paying $100 to $200 per session over the course of 8 weeks, I know I have a problem with that,
or something, right?
Okay.
But when in doubt, work the dog. Don't send it away.
Joyce, are we seeing more dogs who are in shelters or in rescues because they're not being trained by the trainer solely? They're being trained by the people in addition to the trainer? Does it make a difference?
It absolutely makes a difference. If the owners aren't on board, and they're not doing the majority of the work, then the dog is not going to behave for the owner and their families. And it's one of the problems we have with board and train. And I stopped doing it a long time ago because of this problem. People would say, I want to stick my dog with you for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever. And I had rules in place where they had to participate. They couldn't just drop them off and run. They had to show up every couple days and do a lesson with me. And then at the end, I would do several in-home lessons with them. It was all part of the package. And even that wasn't enough. They just didn't do any of the work afterwards when the dog went home. They weren't involved enough in the training process to have it become habitual for them, to integrate it into their lifestyle. And so the dog's behaviors will start to fall off, and they'll revert back to what their baseline behavior was before they came into the training program. So what I try to encourage people to understand about dogs is training is an ongoing lifestyle. It's not just a time and place. You don't just do it for 6 weeks and say, geez, my dog is trained. You know, you have to take what you've learned and you have to apply it for the rest of the dog's life. Now, you might not have to continually teach new things, but you do have to use those things, and you do have to keep a level of management going in your household. And if you don't participate in that process because the trainer did all of it, you're not going to have any understanding of how to do that once the dog gets home. So we have, like I said, we totally stopped doing it quite a while ago. And the only reason we offer it at all now is that client has to be in an ongoing training program through our day training process or through our private training. And then the board and train is just a supplement too, so that the training is ongoing with the dog. So there's no gap in their training plan. But it's so rare. I mean, you know, I might have 1 or 2 dogs in board and train at a time now because they're just, you know, they're only ones that are in another training program with me. It's not their sole source of learning. But yeah, I struggle with this all the time because I get client after client after client who have put their dogs through some intensive board and train program.
Sure.
And
they're not cheap.
Oh no, they've spent all their money already. So then they come to me and they say, hey, I need my dog trained. You know, this other program didn't work. And, you know, obviously when I'm doing the assessment of the dog, I'm confirming you're right, it didn't work. Your dog is really bad behaviors. And I tell them what my price is, and they 9 times out of 10 will look at me and say, well, I got to figure out where I'm going to get that money from now because I've spent all my money on the
Sure.
board and training program.
Yeah.
And,
Wow.
you know, and so the programs that I'm selling are effective because they involve the family. I tell them I'm not going to do all the training. I'm going to teach you how to become the best trainer in the world. You're going to become just as good as I am. And that's my goal. My goal is not to train the dogs, you know, at a professional level. My goal is to train the humans at a professional level, so they're then training their dogs at a professional level. And it works out so much better, and it's faster, and it lasts longer, like the life of the dog. And then they can take it on to the next dog they own.
Okay.
And I think that's something people have to realize is you can learn this. It's not
Sure.
just the professional trainers that can do this. You can save yourself a lot of money in the future if you listen to your trainer and you start to learn how to do these things on your own. Then you can take the next dog you get and the next dog you get, and you can train those dogs on your own. And it's, you know, and then society is going to have better trained dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Jeff. It's complete laziness when you want to send your dog away to board and train, and it just pisses me off. So.
Steve, are dogs less are dogs less trained now or more trained now because you're not sending the dog away as much?
What do you mean?
Well,
As I said, in the old days, for the most part, when you trained a dog, you would send it away.
yeah.
Or,
And I was thinking, Steve, I was thinking of Captain Haggerty,
that's exactly who I thought
that
of.
type of training back. And I don't know if he just trained guard dogs or people's dogs, and then it went back to them. How did that work?
In the old days? I mean,
Yeah.
In the early days of dog training.
that's in the early days, you know, back then, I mean, I wouldn't have had a place to go to learn if they didn't have those places, but they were about business. You know, they didn't have the same attitude that we have, you know. When I wanted to get into full-time training, I went to one of those guys, my old boss, and I said, how would you approach this? And he said, well, if I wanted to take the dog for board and train, then I would say to the owner, who would come to me and say, I could get somebody to come to my house. Why should I give you the dog?
Exactly.
Right? And he would say, well, what are they going to do? How long are they going to be there? You know, what can they possibly get done? Right? And on the other hand, if I was a at-home trainer and, you know, and what about that board and train thing? I'm supposed to say, would you leave your baby in the South Bronx? You don't know who those people are, you know? I mean, so he had a line for everybody, you know? He knew he was pitching. It was all about the pitch, you know, it wasn't about the reality. But the reality is, as we know, reinforcement is the name of the game. If you stop reinforcing behavior, extinction occurs. I mean, if we want to go down that route, that's what happens, right? So it doesn't matter if you train the dog. If you stop the owner doesn't reinforce the behavior, how long is it going to last? It can't last very long unless you have one of those dogs that just does it anyway, you know, one of those. It just, you don't have to teach it anyhow. It's just always looking at you. What do you need? You know, there are those dogs. If you get one of those, which they come around every now and then, right? You know, fine. But, you know, otherwise you got to reinforce the behavior. Otherwise it's going to go away. I dare you to stop reinforcing a behavior on a sighthound and see where it goes. You know, right? I mean, you know, we know there are those dogs. You stop with the cookie, they're going to stop with the behavior. You know, you're like, hey, come on over here, pup. You know, it's like, screw you. What do you got? You know? I got something. Oh, yeah, you didn't feed me last time. You know, forget it. You won't see me again. You know, I mean, there are dogs that come anyway because they do. And then there are the ones that, you know, you better be good at it and reinforce it. And if the owner just passes it along, I mean, look, I actually refer some folks to a board and train guy that I know in South Jersey. He called me up and he said, what's up with your clients? I'm like, what do you mean? I send you really great clients. I only send them to you because they've got some issues and they're going away. So we might as well do what you can with the dog. He goes, yeah, well, that's the problem. They drop their dog off and say, we'll be picking the dog up in 2 weeks.
Fix it.
Well, we're coming
Not even
back in
fix it?
2 weeks. Well, you know, here he is, train the dog. I'll see you in 2 weeks. But he's complaining to me. What's with the client? They're telling me they're going to leave the dog for 2 weeks. I have to tell them, you can't tell me how long it's going to take. That's his thing. He says, I'm not going to even start training your dog until I feel I've established a relationship with that dog, and then I'll move forward.
Okay.
Not until then. And if it takes 3 weeks or 4 weeks or 6 weeks, that's what it is. That's it. They can't tell me how long. I don't know how long. It depends on some factors. Now, I appreciate this guy. Now, I don't know how he charges, but I have a feeling that he's got a flat rate. And if it goes back in 2 weeks or it goes back in 10, it's the same price.
Sure.
He just keeps the dog to get it, to train it for obedience. And if it's a behavioral problem, when he gives it back, he says to them, the dog knows, sit, stay down, come and heel. I mean, and the guy's really good at it. You know, he's like, he almost gets that classical thing. You say down, the dust is coming up off the floor. There's not a minute to decide. It's like down, boom, right? Like that. The dogs are trained in obedience, like kind of reflexive. But the behavior problems, he doesn't claim to, like, if the dog was aggressive when he came, the dog's aggressive, that's it. Do you have some control because stay is really stay? Yes. Does that make the dog friendly? No. And at least he's straight about what he can provide and what happens if you don't continue to reinforce the behavior. So, and part of his thing is you got to come back down to South Jersey a couple of times and I'm going to teach you some handling skills and the way the dog was trained. And, you know, I appreciate a lot of the people because they just have money to throw at this and they don't really have a lot of desire to learn how to train, or that's not in their mind. They don't show up for the lessons. And I'm sure that those really well-trained dogs aren't well-trained for very long when they get home. If the owner's not going to keep up on it, what are you going to get? So, you know, I'm with everybody else. I used to have a kennel in my place, and I would tell people who were really kind of insistent on leaving the dog, okay, I can't tell you anything. This is what it cost. And I make no promises. And they're like, what do you mean? Are you going to train the dog? I'm like, I'm going to do my best. But you know what? Maybe your dog's not going to do so well in the kennel. I don't know. And maybe your dog's going to look like Lassie when it goes home. I don't know that either. But it may look to you when you pick it up like it learned nothing. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. But you're going to be in for the money because I got the dog, you know. But I would try. I really, like Jeff, you know, you try and urge them to understand leaving it somewhere. You know, I mean, one last one. I had a case. I had this little like Catone type of dog that these folks got when I was like 5.5 months old. And it was like a freaky little dog. It wasn't social. I had to sit on the floor. It took a while to make friends. And it was a process to like get this dog to learn a few behaviors. They were old people, wealthy, nice. But they called me back months later and they said, we need you to come back. And I'm like, how's it going? I haven't heard from you guys in a long time. They said, well, she didn't come so great. So we sent her to a place.
Yeah.
You need to come back, please. So I go to their house and this little Catone kind of dog is wearing this giant electric collar on her neck. It was like a free weight hanging on her neck. And when you said come, she ran like hell as far and as fast away as she could. She was petrified. I wanted to murder these people. They just gave somebody the dog and said, here you go. She's not reliable on the come. I'm sure they weren't reliable on the reinforcement. You know what I mean? And she's a sensitive little nervous dog, under-socialized little thing. And they sent her off and some lunatic put this friggin' shock collar on this little dog and trained it to do nothing but avoid, like run. It really was, it was a tough move for me to even get her back a little bit. So I read him the Riot Act and I said, look, you know, I feel like you've really done damage to this dog. I'm not going to be able to come here once a week and fix this. You're going to have to patch it up yourself. And you better go back to the click and the food and forget about that collar. You should throw that thing out and call this guy up and tell him you just had a professional come over. And the next time, if he ever finds out you do something like that again, he's calling up somebody on you. The cops are coming. You know, I mean, I was angry beyond belief that people could get away with that. But when you leave your dog somewhere for these intense boot camp training, right? That's what they like to call it. And what are they doing? Kicking your dog? I mean, you don't really know. You don't unless you know somebody who really does it well, really professional, long time in the biz, all that. People don't know. They just have the money. Somebody said, or they read on the internet, and they ship their dog off. It's a sad story. It's a sad story.
Helen, do you do board and train?
I do not. I've actually done it a couple of times, and for problem behaviors, as soon as you send them home, you have behavioral drift. It goes right back. Dogs are very specific learners, very situational. So in my home, they'll behave differently than they do in their own home. Or so if they have unruly behavior at home, they come here and I set the rules and I don't encourage unruly behavior.
Sure.
They behave differently, but as soon as they get home, it's back to the way they were.
Liberty Hall, as my mom said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I had a dog once that I watched for 2 weeks, and I sent him home, potty trained and crate trained. He didn't used to go in a crate. I swear it wasn't more than a week, and that dog was back to peeing all over the house. As soon as he was back in his own home. But they didn't follow directions. They didn't follow instructions. So, and back in the old days, Steve, you were saying it was a pitch, it was a business. Yeah, you could do that with your board and train. It could be a business, but nowadays, but they didn't have Yelp reviews and Google reviews, and all these other things. So if you do a board and train and you send that dog home and 2 days later he's peeing all over the house, you're going to get some bad reviews and your business is going to be shot. So
Interesting.
I'm not interested in taking a losing proposition like that. I don't need my reputation ruined because I know the owners can't follow up. And I don't hold that against them. I'm not, I don't even know that. I mean, yeah, to some degree, maybe it's laziness, but people are busy. They have a lot going on. People work 2 jobs, 3 jobs, or everyone in the house works. They have kids. There's, daycare. Everyone's around. The dog is last. Dog is always last. Dog is after all the kids, all the adults. Dog is always last.
Sure.
I don't like that, but that's the way it is. That's a fact. So, and a lot of these people just don't have the time or the motivation or the energy to train themselves, to train the dog themselves. An alternative that I try to offer for board and train is what I call day training, where I would work with the dog. I go to their home. They don't need to, in fact, I don't even want them there at first. And I work with the dog every day. I come in and I do whatever it is that needs to be worked on, whether it's behavior problem, basic training, combination. But we have weekly follow-up sessions with the owners. So I might work with the dog Monday through Friday. Saturday, I come in. It's a session with the owners. This is what we did this week, folks. This is what your dog learned. Now, this is how you get him to do it. So this way, instead of having 2 learners at the same time, I have 1 learner, the dog, and then I bring the dog into the human with the human. Dog has already got an idea of what we're doing and does it for me, and now I have to teach the human. So
that's the hard part.
Yeah, always. So, but rather than having the dog as a learner and the human as a learner at the same time, and of course the human's giving all wrong signals, and
Sure.
it's harder for the dog to learn it. So, so I would offer those programs where I work with the dog 5 days a week, come in at the end of the week with the family members. This is what we did. Oh, and I take videos and send it to them. It's not just, I'm not working in a vacuum. There's videos, written notes always. And then we have sessions with the owners. And then after we wrap up, whatever the course is, whether it was a 1 week, a 2 week, a 4 week, depending on what the situation was, I would follow up for 4 more weeks, once a week afterwards, with the family members, and then it would be another one 2 weeks later, and another one a month later. So it goes on for months, but once a week for 4 weeks, then once every 2 weeks, and then once a month. So that I'm following up with them, and I know that they're, following up on what we went over, what we taught. But yeah, take out reinforcement, behavior goes down the drain. But also, it's not just take out reinforcement. It's Behavioral drift. They if you take them out of the home, away from their owner, all that at the same time, you have a different dog. And as soon as they go home, they fall right back into old patterns. And they are not a willing participant in the process of change, which is what I tell all my clients. For behavior modification.
Helen, I just wanted to ask you, do you get clients who do follow through and do the work?
I get clients that are very gung-ho at the beginning, and then it just kind of,
okay.
They experience their own behavioral drift. They go back into old patterns.
Yep. I know.
But if I can get them to maintain that level for a few months, the training sticks a little better.
Got it. Yeah.
So,
I just wanted to, into everybody talking about these cases. Do you ever feel there's a case where the dog is so crazy, for lack of a better word,
over the top
issues that are just extreme? People aggression, dog aggression, totally not having been socialized. Owners are trying, but it's just that dog needs to, they're just not good at the boundaries and the any of the counter conditioning, desensitization. They're not willing to go all the way, say, to protect people from possibly being bitten or issues with dogs, but they really don't want to give up on the dog. Do you see that as a dog who could come to a board and train, and just because it's kind of displaced that a trainer could get through to it? I know, Joyce, you talked about on one of our webinars, or the mini webinars, you had a bulldog that you worked with that was just, you couldn't get near it and was really over the top with reactivity, and you worked with him and you brought him around.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's many cases where we tell the client, let us get it started. Let's try to find out what direction this dog needs to go in. We take all the hits up front. So if somebody's going to get bitten, it's going to be us. Thank goodness we don't get bitten a lot because we read the dogs really well. But we get the program started for the dogs, start working on their impulse control, start teaching them some to get the brain thinking, start working on their choice making. And then we bring the client in and say, okay, we've introduced this stuff to your dog so that he has a concept of what we're going to move forward with. Now we need to get you involved so that you can start adding this stuff at home. And that's where I love day training. And we do it a little different in that the dogs come to our facility 2 times a week. And we work with them during the day to get those things started. And then we do a little mini session with the owners when they pick up so that we can make sure that they're on board and they understand what they need to do and that their technique and timing are good. Mm-hmm. Give them some handouts, and then they go home to work on just a few little things that are doable in their busy schedules. And then a couple days later, they bring the dog back and we keep moving the process forward as things are ready. If we notice the dog needs more time on a certain step, we stay there. Like we tell, like Steve was saying, we don't know what the time frame is. We don't know if it'll be 12 weeks, 12 sessions, 24 sessions, 36. It could be heck, the whole year. But we just tell them this is the process. And because the owners are so involved at such baby steps, and the dogs are getting so much repetition and reinforcement from the day of full training with us, and then going home and it's not overwhelming for the family, we're having great success with it. Dogs that you're talking about, those over the top, super hyper, sometimes even showing some aggressions, are really learning, and they're coming around, and the family is feeling empowered because they're seeing their work is having an effect on it as well.
I have a dog for you, but it's up here.
Yes, put a postage stamp on its forehead.
Yes, send it off.
Just to piggyback off that, I mean, like when I started talking earlier, obviously, and everybody said it, sometimes you remove the dog from the environment, then it just acts like a regular dog and none of those behavior. And I tell people all the time, I said, look, you need to change your environment, or the dog needs a change of environment. Right? And that's why I said sometimes when you have dogs with severe behavior issues, if there's safety issues, then sometimes it might be a good idea to remove the dog from the environment and then work the dog from there. So, I did want to piggyback off of one thing Helen said, and kudos to Helen, because she's so polite and very understanding of dog owners. Me, I'm not so much. Okay. Okay. So if there's dog owners watching this, I don't care what your schedule is. I don't care how busy you are. Okay. I don't care what your life was 6 months ago. Okay. Your dog should still be a priority. I understand your children are your first priority. It doesn't mean that your dog or your cat or your hamster or your bird is no longer a priority. It may be down the scale a little bit, but I mean, I'm sorry, this lack of accountability, and not you, Helen, lack of accountability from pet owners, it's like, it's an epidemic. It's like a disease with no vaccine. I mean, it's crazy, okay? And the average person watches 3 to 4 hours of TV every day, okay? 3 to 4 hours of TV every day. If you watch a sitcom, that's a half hour, okay? So you have a half hour at minimum a day to work with your dog, okay? So there's my rant.
Okay.
All right.
Counterpoint. That's what I try to specialize in. I call it couch potato training.
You mentioned that on an episode last year.
Because that's how I'm a couch potato. I got the TV on right now. It's on mute, but I have the TV on. Every commercial, I'd work with the dogs. It was perfect. 3 minutes of training, 10-minute break. 3 minutes of training, 10-minute break. But also, I get what you're saying. If you get a dog, there should be accountability. Absolutely.
Okay.
But
people are accountable they can be very accountable in taking their dog to a vet and for shots and checkups and grooming, but the training piece is the really hard one to get through to people how important it is.
Right. Well, for the most part, I mean, yes, we do teach our children, but we send them out to school. So why would, people send their kids off to school? People don't teach their kids. I mean, they teach them life, but they don't teach them subjects, and some people don't even teach them life. I don't know. But so, people, you're sending your kid off to school. Why would I have to teach my dog? Let me send him off to school. That
mentality.
Attitude.
Wow.
I don't like it, but I mean, that's, it's out there a lot. And if I just make people feel guilty about it, they're not going to get anywhere. So I try to work around. I try to fit it into their schedules. I try to make them see. And I feel a lot of that is just avoidance, because it's fear of the unknown. It's fear of failure. And so if they're just too busy to get to, because that's the kind of thing I do. I stall, and I don't get to something because deep down I'm afraid to do it. Not dog training, but other stuff. So, I still haven't installed some new software on my computer because it's like, oh God. But we make up these little things that we put.
Good point, Helen. I like that, because dog trainers are social. Most dog trainers have to be social workers too, when you go into people's homes and deal with them, because usually the problem of the dog, in my estimation, is the problem of the person or part of it. So just like with kids. So,
and that accountability bond, I mean, if they take their dog to the vet and they take their dog to the groomer, they're basically an Uber driver. They're not cutting the hair. They're not examining the dog or giving the vaccines, right? They're just an Uber driver. They're just giving the dog a lift. They're not actually doing anything much more than that. We can say they're accountable for it, but when we talk about the time spent building a relationship and teaching, that's a different kind of. That's not a ride.
It is.
it's the marathon. It's, forevermore, this is what you do in order to get this. If it doesn't matter to you, it doesn't matter to me. But, if you want certain things, you got to work toward them. And that's not a drive, unless, like you say, you're shipping them to somebody, and then you're going to got to drive down and pick them back up. And are they going to have what are they going to have when you bring them back? Who knows? Maybe not much, or maybe, since they don't generalize very well. I listened to that guy because he reinforced the behavior. But last time I was in this house, I peed on the rug. I think I'll try that again, and that's that.
Right. Right.
That's it.
So I think that's a good place to leave it for today. I think we talked about a lot of different things. I think that the general consensus that I got from most of you, if not all of you, is that it has its place, and that, as usual, as we tend to go with these discussions, it's more about the owners than about the dogs. So, of course, as usual, it's complicated. So,
no, it's not. People are lazy and they gotta be accountable. It's very simple. It is not rocket science. It's not complicated. Get up off your ass and take your dog for a damn walk.
Well, there you go. So, folks, I'd like to thank you all for being here.
I'll see you next time.
I'd like to thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot now. Bye-bye.
Hopefully we'll see you next time.